Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LunarCrush Live. I've got Ian here with me, our head of community on NFTs. Ian, what's up, my man?
Not much, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Today, we've got Avery, president of Vayner3, joining us here in the live stream. Next week, we've got a couple of streams coming up. We've got Travis Kling from Ikigai Asset Management. Super stoked to have him on. Have not had him on LunarCrush Live yet, but known him for a long time. Super smart guy. Crypto asset management firm. You guys are gonna love them. And then we've got Perina and Santiago Marino from FlickPlay. Looks like NFTs unlocking the AR world. I don't know. Maybe we're moving away from metaverse and we're back to AR. We'll see what happens there. And as a reminder, we do not take payment for our live streams. We bring on fun, exciting people that have dedicated their careers and lives to crypto. So without further ado, we're going to hit this intro button here, and then we'll bring Avery up. Avery, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course. So we always like to start, where are you in the world and what's it like there today?
I am in Miami, Florida. It is a beautiful day in August, just sitting in my office.
Nice. What's it like in August in Miami? Like 104 and sweltering humidity? Like you can't go out past 8:30 a.m.?
I think that is like the misconception of Miami. I'm actually originally from Nashville, Tennessee. In Nashville, Tennessee, in August, you don't want to go outside past 8:30 a.m., but Miami is actually very breezy. We're right next to the ocean. So I think it's like 85, sunny, beautiful, and not as hot as you might imagine.
Okay, I like that. A little bit easier to deal with. Yes, not the sweltering, like locked in kind of Midwest and South heat that you've got there. Cool.
Exactly.
So we want to learn. We want to learn a little bit about you. What makes you passionate about Web3? How'd you kind of get into the industry? And then kind of tell us what is Vayner3?
For sure. So I have been sort of passively interested in crypto for the last like 5 years or so. And around, 18, 24 months ago, we started to get really interested. So I'll give you guys a little bit of like my backstory. As I just mentioned, I'm originally from Nashville, went to school in California and stayed out there for the early part of my career working in marketing at companies like Google. Then moved with Google to a couple different places, including New York. And in New York is where I got to first experience the crazy, wonderful, wild world of Gary Vee and the Vayner family. So I joined Vayner in 2018 and immediately started learning a lot about all things social media, all things relevant marketing, really like digital first, scrappy. We were ahead and early to a ton of different trends, which was really fun and exciting. I then went and started our business in Asia Pacific. So launching in Singapore and then opening in Bangkok and Tokyo and Sydney and Hong Kong. And late 2020, deep pandemic, we're surviving the pandemic, but spent a lot of time just kind of like looking around for the next big thing online. Early 21, Gary starts becoming interested in NFTs. And we just dove right in, like head first, spending a ton of time in Discords and Clubhouse and learning from some of the early adopters in the space. And May of 2021, Gary launched VeeFriends. And in July of 2021, we launched Vayner NFT, where we really focused on going, an inch wide and a mile deep on all things NFTs, helping both enterprises and folks, celebrities and athletes learn about the space first. And we launched a couple of different projects in partnership with some of our clients. That was all going great, really NFT summer. And by early 2022, it started becoming really clear to me that the opportunity for a lot of our enterprise partners was actually beyond just NFTs. Like, yes, we were talking about NFTs, but beyond that, like crypto was such a huge thing for a lot of them. Blockchain is going to underpin a lot of their B2B solutions. And, we were very focused on this NFT aspect, but it was becoming clear that that was like just one part of the multidimensional world of Web3 that's coming and coming soon. So a couple weeks ago, we just repositioned ourselves, sort of evolving from Vayner NFT into Vayner3, which is a Web3 consultancy. And we've really narrowed our focus to specifically hone in on these enterprises, Fortune 500 types who want to learn about this space, want to build their businesses towards it. Sometimes starting with NFTs, but sometimes kind of starting with something a little bit beyond that, and doing a lot of strategy work in the space across metaverse and NFTs and crypto and all the things that Web3 has to offer. So I'm fortunate to lead our team and learn from them every single day because it's an ever evolving world.
Thank you. Yeah. So you've been there for a while then. And so you've probably seen the evolution of Web3 at Vayner in general, and Gary. And, I had the opportunity to talk to him on a blockchain and booze that we have here a couple months back. But
sounds fun.
Yeah, I was always kind of waiting for him to really kind of dig his teeth in, sink his teeth in, because all the baseball card stuff and like the trading aspect of everything. I was always like, when is Gary just going to go just headfirst into this thing? And then finally he did, and it was like very headfirst into the thing. What was it like in, from that 2018 to 2020 period before, like were you guys having conversations internally about it? Like, were people starting to pitch stuff in different creative executions? And you're like, man, we keep seeing these things come up. Like, what is this thing? And then when did it start to kind of click internally there?
Yeah, I think that, so Gary was an early investor in Coinbase. So he's been looking at crypto for a long time, and, it would come up from time to time, but in 2018, it was so far from something like a Fortune 500 was like really ready to play in, outside of Tesla, which is clearly, what probably the first publicly traded company who was like accepting crypto for like major physical goods. But it was not something that was coming up on a day-to-day basis. We were hearing a lot about blockchain in these very small use cases. I remember we did a test in like 2018 with, it was IBM, with like sort of blockchain, creating a more efficient supply chain for digital ad inventory. So we did that, but there were so few publishers that were participating, and the scale was just like really, really small. So we were interested. It was just a little bit too early for there to be enough like salience and scale for it to really matter. But we were kind of messing around with that and playing around with that. On a personal side, I got into crypto in like maybe 2016 because some friends were like really into it, and they were like, "Hey, Avery, like this is what Bitcoin is. This is Litecoin, if anyone remembers that. This is Ethereum, and this is why it matters, and this is some will say the future of finance." So I put a little bit of money in, but honestly was not like following it too closely until I think it was the NBA Top Shot moment that really started to gain enough like mass adoption and enough people caring about it for us to be like, okay, the time is now. Like Gary was aware of it. He was like looking into it. We were doing these sort of small pilots and test use cases, but it was too small to be relevant. And then I think Top Shot really changed the game for that. We're like, oh, wow, millions of people have collected an NFT and been onboarded into this experience. That's a large number. It's not just something that's like super tiny. And I think in parallel to that, we were exploring this idea of Top Shot is, an easy onboarding mechanism, but we saw that next continuation be like collecting on the Ethereum blockchain, using CryptoPunks as an example of really like a cultural signal that galvanized thought leaders and tastemakers around the world around this sort of collection that was very countercultural, but became its own status symbol. So I think those two things together really served as that light bulb moment to be like, okay, the time is starting to be now. And of course, Gary loves to learn by doing things and being hands-on. Unlike a lot of other CEOs, like Gary was one of the first people on TikTok, right? Leveraging it. He was a fan of Musical.ly. He loves to be in the space himself. So he wanted to really get hands-on with it and launch VeeFriends, which it's just so ahead of its time when you look at what Gary has developed from a utility perspective, from an IP perspective, all wrapped into this one whole program. I think the layers of how strategic it is will play out in the long run as being something that is very historically correct. But I think we've been experimenting, dabbling, keeping our eye on it. And it was those light bulb moments of Top Shot and CryptoPunks that were like, okay, the time is now. And I think that also served as almost like VeeFriends served as a blueprint for a lot of folks to look at in the space of something that has tangible utility. And for some of your listeners who might not be familiar with the project, each Series 1 VeeFriend holder actually gets access to a multi-day conference that Gary's hosting. The first one being in May of 2022, next one 23, the year after 24. And this is really like a full-scale conference similar to a South by Southwest, where you have thought leaders and speakers and entertainers from all across the world gathering in one place. And that clearly, conferences cost money to attend, so you get access to this as an exclusive perk of holding a VFriend Series 1. And that at the time was a very novel concept. Now that's been replicated and scaled quite a bit, but it's a very specific, like almost guaranteed utility you get as being a holder.
Awesome. I love how you use the word or use the phrase historically correct. It's like, so like I've listened enough Gary to know like he's just historically correct. Like on a long enough time preference, like you guys are going to be right. And so VFriends came out. Was it like you felt kind of cutting your teeth on the experience yourself, figuring out how that process is going to work, launching up like a collection, figuring the utility out. And so as you figured that out, and now you guys are trying to say, hey, clients over here, if you need to go execute on something, like here's the expertise that we have. And so my question on top of that is, how are you guys actually hiring for some of these positions? Because it's a very unique individual that understands the different chains, understands the projects, understands the artwork, understands the utility, and can actually give direction. And so how do you guys kind of find yourself getting in there and kind of creating that team?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, yes, I think VFriend served as that like cutting our teeth moment for the entire Vayner organization. Everything from the technical component, which was like a huge lift, and like it's pretty complicated to do something like that, particularly the mechanics, which were Dutch auction, and you could choose it wasn't a blind box, very different from a mechanic standpoint than what existed in the market. And then also from a marketing perspective, I think we learned just so much. But that credibility, I think, is what sets Vayner apart from a lot of other enterprises who are trying to play in the space. Is we're like, yeah, we we do this. Here's some examples where you can see they're relatively large scale, and that'll be how we always learn. Like we always learn by doing things, getting the experience, cutting our teeth and knowing, okay, amazing. Here's the 15 things we do again and the 5 things that we'll never do again, right? Like you only learn by doing it. And in this world, there is no blueprint for how to do these things because it's so new and it's so early. How to hire. So, when I was first opening our office in Singapore, I spent a lot of time just trying to understand the local culture and have them teach me versus me trying to teach them what I thought. I was like, let me get a bunch of people who have done this before and are really, experts in the way that you run an agency in Singapore. I took the same, and that worked really well. It was like, okay, great. I know what I know, but I also know what I don't know. And explain to me what's a funny Chinese New Year ad and all this stuff. Same exact model as what we started for Vayner3. So our first couple of hires were really people who were very deep in the space. We met them through some sort of small communities and a lot of recruiting on Twitter. So some of our earliest employees, I'll shout one guy out who's our second employee and still just such a delight, Crypto Novo. Novo was, doing these spaces and educating people and onboarding them and building these AR filters. And we're like, hey, are you, interested to join us at Vayner? First, he joined us part-time and then full-time. In his day job before, he was like a PE teacher. So it was completely not related to what we do.
Yeah, I love that.
So meeting people on Twitter. Also, you can really verify people's credentials. You can see what's in their wallet, how long they've been a part of this, how they communicate in things like Twitter Spaces or live streams or, how they behave in Discord, which is great. I found, my chief of staff, we met on Twitter, my head of strategy, we met on Twitter, because people post all this stuff around what they think. Sometimes their thoughts are very well organized. They might be making graphs or charts and coming up with interesting insights. So I'm pretty shameless. I just DM people and say hey, I'm Avery from Vayner. Would you be open to a chat?
It's just not a resume, right? The difference of what you just said right there and the time and effort and what someone has to put out into the world in order to technically be the type of person that you want to be a part of what you're doing. It's understanding the wallet. Have you pushed something across a chain before? How many NFTs do you own? It's just so much different in this world. And I love hearing that because that as a startup, that's the same kind of thing that we're doing. And to hear Vayner3 is probably a startup within a bigger organization, but you guys kind of have that pedigree. You're doing the same thing. And that's the way that the rest of the world has to move or they're going to be left behind too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it also blends. I mean, we're a professional services company. Clearly, having professional services experience is super helpful at like making decks and memos and things like that. But we can also cross-pollinate a little bit. And I think that's something that we've been able to do successfully is take people who understand our core business and mash them up with people who are really deep in the space. But I would say it's a prerequisite that you need to be very familiar with how, different chains work. What is a good project? Like how to leverage Discord effectively. That's like really core to our business. And then thinking how you apply that if you're an enterprise company, that's, I think, the special sauce that happens when we infuse that with people who've spent their careers in brand building.
So that's a great transition. We've talked about cutting our teeth, getting into the industry, which is something that I've always admired about Gary, is he's very adamant about getting in there and getting his hands dirty. And then you've also talked about like that light bulb moment where crypto and Web3 just all started to make sense for you guys internally, and then hiring people from the community. What's that conversation like with these large entities that don't have all of that experience and haven't been in Discord and don't maybe understand, building a resume on Twitter and doing all of that? How do you guys consult people to community manage this new community? Because the Web3 ecosystem can be very demanding at times, and it's a different kind of consumer that you're selling to. How do you guys consult on that? And what's that like catch-up process like?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ian. We really start with education and strategy. First, they need to understand what's actually happening here. I think there's a perception in a lot of like this sort of Web3 community that these companies are just looking to like sell into the existing NFT buyers. I actually don't think that's the case. For a lot of our clients, they're like, how do we use this technology as a way to connect more deeply with our consumers and do something that's like culturally relevant? And like stay up on the trends. So it really starts with like education, and then that bleeds into like a strategy. It's like, okay, great. What is everyone else doing in the space? What is your unique value add? How can you do something cool? And I think that if you're a brand who's existed for centuries, like you've got a lot to lose. It's not worth it for them to make $5 million and then like lose $20 million and with a bunch of like angry people in Discord, like screaming about how their asset devalued, which by the way, has happened to like 99.9% of NFT projects. So I think that the way that we're sort of thinking about this is these enterprises look at it is understand what's happening, find their unique value add, and then start to bridge ways that they can leverage Web3 technology to either connect with a new consumer group or connect to their existing consumers in a new way. I think that's where like the magic happens. Like this space will grow as brands come in and bring in more users, not try to sell the next thing to the million users who are like on crypto Twitter all day, every day. That has already I think the moment for that has sort of passed. And now we're really looking at brands as able to drive in new waves of users and connect with their consumers in a new way.
So as you sell to these entities already existing customers, are you finding that the traditional Web3 ways of community management like Discord and Twitter are working to manage these communities that aren't super crypto native? Or like I'm in so many different Discord servers and it is exhausting to manage our own at LunarCrush and then be active in all these other communities. Like is that the future? Like we're all just going to be in Discord all the time, and like does the general public that isn't native to crypto want that? Or what are you guys finding?
I think Discord is specifically like designed for gamers, right? Like that's the history of Discord, is all for gamers. So for gaming communities, it makes a ton of sense. For brands that have an NFT project that's like a big focus of theirs, it can make a lot of sense. But we actually encourage brands to think about Discord as like beyond just the NFT community. I share your sentiment around just how being in Discord all day is a lot, right? There's so many different notifications, even keeping up with like your favorite like top projects. Say you have like 10 projects that you really like and you want to be an active community member. It's hard to like be present in all of those. I think the future of Discord will be for the super fans, like the people who are like super into the project. Like there will be that community who wants to engage on a daily basis, but there also might be the community who just wants to participate and like leverage their NFTs like a way to get into a concert or something that they have in their wallet. Not everybody will be a super fan. And I think that's okay. It's like the same way that we see fandom that exists in, a lot of people go to Disney World. Not everybody has their house painted like in Disney colors, right? Some people do. And some people have like the Disney wallpaper and go all out, but that's not everyone. I think the future will be sort of shades of commitment. We've seen a lot of diehard fans born in the Web3 space, but that won't be everyone. And I think a sort of follow on to that is the level of like action needed to participate in the NFT space is something that I think even like the OG community members feel like is a burden. Like if you go on vacation, you might miss a claim, you might miss something. And there's a lot of people building this space to sort of summarize and roll up all the things that you're eligible for as like a perk holder. But I think brands have the opportunity to make that experience not so intensive and more like, hey, drop in when you want. Here's what we're doing. Here's how you can participate and engage with us at like kind of sequence times. It doesn't feel like an always on, that like grinding in the Discord kind of feeling that I don't think is going to be the way that most mass consumers want to engage.
Yeah, even that like interaction though, Vayner and Gary, you guys have built infrastructure to kind of help that onboarding process. I got to come to VCon and you have your app and you connect it and just scan the QR code. So is that part of the service that you guys offer through the consulting, is like some of the infrastructure to like help this onboarding process make it easier? It's not super difficult to like, or super easy right now, to go through the process of loading a wallet and buying an NFT. Is that something that you guys aim to kind of drive forward?
Yeah, where we sort of add value there, VFriends is like all of that was developed exclusively for them, potentially would be sold like down the line. But at this point, it's more like consulting on how you can approach these things. And a lot of the way that we've been looking at this is through partnerships. So for example, let's just say someone like we did something actually a couple weeks ago called Web3 Demo Day. So if there are any listeners who want to hear from a bunch of different startups in the space, whether it's DressX or Token Proof, or this is what Salesforce is doing, and this is what Fireblocks is doing. We pride ourselves in knowing what's happening across the ecosystem and then putting our partners together with the right builders in this space to design something. I think we're so early that 1 + 1 can equal 11 if we do it correctly. And if we partner our brands up with folks who can help sort of onboard them. I think for a brand, you all might remember when every single brand was like building an app and you're like, wait, why do I need a toilet paper app? Like, I'm just going to buy toilet paper. Like, it's fine. I think we're trying to guide brands that not every brand needs a Discord. Not every brand needs an app, but them being a part of this culture can mean they're sponsoring things, can mean they're integrated with existing things. We've done a lot of cool integrations, whether it's with Premin or Token Proof or OneOf or so many of the other builders in the space. And I think that's a really good way for brands to participate without needing to develop infrastructure from square zero. And at Vayner, our job is really to consult them on like what exists today. Do you want to build it? Do you want to buy it? Or do you want to partner? And I think more often than not right now, partnering is a really good way for brands to experience, also without committing like millions of dollars to development costs.
It's a great point around, does everyone need an app? Because in those very early days, it was like, that's too crazy. We're not going to build our own app. Some of our infrastructure is still like an intranet, right? So it was like not making sense. And then you got a couple years later down the road, and you think about like the auto manufacturers. It's like Ford has an app, Toyota has an app. All these things have an app because the infrastructure is hitting a spot that it's capable and easy for them. And then you've got the consultancies and the strategists is coming in there and saying, here's your best options. Here's now move forward. And I feel like we're about to kind of continue to cross into that chasm of, hey, there's a lot more infrastructure and options for you as a brand to engage with your audience in a much deeper way. Because I do agree with you, talking to a couple of brands ourselves where it was a long tail idea. It was not like, these brands are a little bit more connected, where I feel some of the influencer type maybe folks in the space, or whether it's like athletes or things like that, kind of went that other direction of like, let me drop a project and like, here I go. Where I feel like the brands themselves actually might represent this kind of next leg up in the infrastructure, because they'll be funding there's a lot of dollars behind that to fund infrastructure that the rest of the community can start to take advantage of. Are you seeing that with the brands kind of thinking about that?
I think that's exactly right. And it also, we were just sort of talking about some folks being a little bit like, they want to dip their toe in. They're not all ready to dive completely in. They want to learn and they want to dip their toe, and they want to make sure that they're not ending up on the cover of like some Web2 publication as like the big flop, right? Like they're like, I'd rather just not do it than like have something that like makes me look very bad in the Wall Street Journal, So I think that partnering is a great way to do it. It's like amazing. You can tap into an existing community, add value to them as you learn. So if you joined at VCon, you saw like many of the different brand sponsorships that were like very well integrated. It was like, okay, within the app, it was like connected to Coinbase wallet, easy, nice way for them to kind of like lean in. You You can get a free cup of coffee from Coach. You can, go play this game for Candy Digital. You can, charge your phone to the Chipotle thing. I think those are good ways for brands to sort of play. And we've also seen brands do things that are like more integrated. We did a cool thing with Doodles at South by Southwest with Bear Paint, where everything at their installation was painted in Bear Paint colors. And there was like a little NFT if you were there. That's a fun example. We've done a bunch of cool stuff with like Tinder and American Eagle, Stella Artois, tapping into different artists that really like create relevance without those brands also making this very long-term commitment to NFT collectors, which, as you alluded to earlier, Anne, can be like, if people are buying it, the mint's going to sell out really fast, and then they're going to be expecting a lot in the back end. So if you go at this from sort of a partnership angle, it's adding value and supporting the ecosystem without expecting any sort of like immediate financial returns.
Yep. I have a question around, you've got these clients, a lot of big clients, a lot of big brands. We're not at fever pitch like we were, 8 months ago to a year ago. What's the conversation with them right now in this market? And, what is the advisement that you guys are giving around kind of like the next 12 months and preparing for what's going on?
So, while we're not at fever pitch anymore in terms of like hype cycle, I actually think that there's way more interest from brands and companies now than there was a year ago, because they view this, they now see that like this isn't just like a crazy hype cycle. It's all about like making free money, because at the same time as you see prices and trading activity way down, you see developer activity up. You see companies like Salesforce and Disney and Spotify investing and building infrastructure behind these things. And I think that infrastructure, similar to what we saw with apps, is actually like a prerequisite for some of these bigger companies to even play. Like they can't play in this space where it's all NFT day traders just like hyping things up and then dumping them. Like that, there isn't a lot of clear regulation in the space yet. And I think that as we see these bigger companies playing to build the right infrastructure that scales, it actually becomes more of a place that enterprises want to play. So what we're hearing from clients now is a lot of curiosity, a lot of like wanting to build the right strategic approach, and a lot of wanting to add value to the ecosystem in a scalable way. Less selling out 10K, PFP, more how do I reward my existing holder, my existing community with something that's going to improve their daily lives? Right. How can we use Web3 as a way to create these deeper connections with our consumers, whether that's through like, exploring what is the metaverse experience like, or, taking crypto. So I think that we're at that stage, way less attention on rushing into an NFT than what I think we heard a year ago.
I think that's a great analysis. So we're running up on time. I know we only got you for a half hour, but Ian, I'll let you last question for Avery.
I love it. Thanks. So I guess what's the thing that you're most excited about on the long tail, that you see this? I kind of got into this because I saw the opportunity, like from the creator economy side, to help, small individuals and brands to kind of get into this. What are you personally most excited about unlocking, what crypto unlocks?
I'm excited about what Web3 unlocks in terms of the next era of advertising. I think what we've heard over the last 10 years, if anybody listening to this is a marketer or advertiser, is there's been so much pressure of like how all of the value that has accrued in Web2 has really gone to like the duopoly into the platforms. Of course, the creators got a little piece, but it was like a tiny piece. And this huge business like accrued all the value to like these central platforms. And we've seen users sort of react like negatively to that. And we've seen changes like IDFA start to disrupt that. And I'm excited for Web3 being the next era of sort of permissioned advertising, of, creating experiences that consumers want to interact with, and also almost using like your wallet sign in as like the new cookie. Like cookies have pretty much died in terms of digital ad measurement. Right. Can now the wallet be the next cookie? And can we really look at this as the next iteration of advertising? It's something as a marketer has been like very much top of mind since I first started to look and experience what's happening in the space. I think it's a longer term thing. It's not something we're going to see tomorrow, but in the long run, I think there's so much creativity that can come into this space as a way to engage, reward, connect with new consumers that can replace a lot of this, digital banner ad cookie targeted crap that we've seen over the last 10 years.
You're exactly right. I love that. And that's why we're all here, swing that pendulum just a little bit back to the consumer one day at a time. So Avery, I really appreciate you being here, President Vayner3. Can't wait to see all the work that you guys are putting out there. Glad you're there for us in this industry. Ian, as always, my man, it was great. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll chat with you backstage.